Hi everyone, my name is Miss Nguyen. I'm a bio honors teacher at Mountain View High School, and this is my back to school night presentation. So this is a little bit about me. This is a lot of information, so I'll just give you the big highlights. I'm local, I'm from the Bay Area. I've been teaching for 10 years. I also teach anatomy physiology. I have a wide experience teaching a lot of age ranges, but for the last 5 years, I've been pretty much focused on bio honors and occasionally some other classes on top of bio honors, but I've been teaching bio honors for the last 5 years. So, a big thing about this class, I like to say, is it's really for fans of science. So, we really dive into the nitty gritty in biology honors. So, we dive into a little bit of the molecular background for the big molecules that make up our cells. And because we dive into that molecular background, we can really explain the reason why cells are structured the way they do, why DNA is structured the way it is, and how that affects how it functions and how we take advantage of those structure things to do cool stuff like labs and things like that. That I would say is the biggest difference between bio honors and regular track biology. Just a heads up. For our class grade, our grading categories are broken down into three major groups. So 10% of it comes from work habits. Work habits is just being organized and having your work organized in a certain way and submitting some basic tasks that don't relate to learning. 50% of our grade, though, is about doing your actual class work, and organizing it goes into work habits, but doing the actual work is in the classwork category. So that's any material needed to learn is in the classwork category. Notes, worksheet, practice, lab simulations, all goes into classwork category. Sometimes open note quizzes are used, and that's in the classwork category. Summative assessments are the last 40% of our overall grading categories. So those are assessments to check for understanding of our concepts. So that includes projects, that includes tests. So for our current unit, we have done 2 projects, one individual, one group, and we're about to do a mini test. A mini test is a really short test. It's essentially a quiz that's put in the test category. It's about 20 minutes and limited in scope when I say something is a mini test. All right. So anyways, and in terms of letter grades though, final grades, generally speaking, I keep it pretty straightforward. 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C, etc. In terms of big policies for our class, the big one is if your student is sick and not feeling up to going to class, please call it in. So it's an excused absent, and then they have a week to make up work. If they aren't excused, then the policy is that they get a 20% late penalty and they have to get that work in by the end of the unit. However, if your student's having a bad day, we do offer 3 revision passes, which students can request by email. Those only apply to classwork assignments that aren't presentations, discussions, quizzes, and group work that involves a live component. So in that case, that's mainly like their homework, like notes and worksheets and stuff. But they can revise a late assignment to an on-time assignment. So if there is one day where they're just a little overloaded, they can take advantage of that revision policy. They can also revise summative assessments, though that's a bit more limited. Any projects and tests, as long as there's no live component and it's not the final, they can revise up to a B- if they really truly missed the mark. But we try to make sure they're focused on working on the current unit rather than trying to revise all their past work. So just a heads up. But it is there in case they have like a really bad problem on one of their assessment where they misunderstood the criteria, etc. Okay, so in terms of a typical distance unit, for the distance learning mode, generally speaking, Thursday, Fridays are always a live Zoom lesson, and then the Monday, Tuesday blocks are usually a live Zoom lesson, though they can include asynchronous lessons. I try to have 1 to 2 of those per month on that Monday, Tuesday block. So asynchronous lesson days, I'll usually give them a worksheet, a lecture to do, and the only thing they have to submit before 3 is an attendance question to just make sure they get marked as present for the day, and they can spend and take their time on the worksheet or the lecture. In class day, they just have to show up to be marked as present. And also, just a heads up, I always post all my work on Canvas, not Google Class. Now, a typical unit, though, generally starts with lecture and notes and activities to help learn the material. And then the back half of the unit, we start to transition to more assessments and working on projects and things like that. General unit overview, current unit is just a heads up. If you didn't know this, a lot of when it comes to lectures, those are actually pre-recorded videos that I and another teacher named Mr. Smilo make together. And then the expectation is students watch the video and take organized notes on them. And the in-class lessons are actually used to address problems or to do practice and to collaborate when learning the material that they learned through the video notes that they did for homework the night before. In terms of assessments, we've so far have done a mini research assignment. Students are currently working on a project where they're proposing an experiment. And finally, we're going to do a mini test, which is 20 minutes long on chemistry concepts on this upcoming Thursday, Friday. All right, and this is just an example of how I format and organize a lecture so students know where everything is and they have access to not just the video lecture, but the slides, and the slides we put the notes as well. They also know what chapter of the textbook the lecture corresponds to, so they can use the textbook as a reference for learning if they need further explanation or clarification. But they don't have to use the book at all times. They have the lecture and the slides primarily for their learning, and they can use their book as additional supplementation to their learning. In terms of learning, though, I really want students to be proactive about revising and revisiting their past work in order to really understand the material. That's why we organize our work. So we actually have students put all their work into portfolio folders that are all centralized in one location and organized in a certain way. This is actually a setup of how the folders are organized, and I have access to their folders. This really lets students revisit their work and make corrections and other things and check it through their work as needed without having issues finding their work, and it's still under their ownership. Also gives us a backup system if there's any flaws with Canvas when it comes to students submitting their work. And another big advantage is if your student is struggling, you can look at their portfolio. You can ask them to look at their portfolio and see if they have been doing the work and if it is organized, because if it's organized, then you know they can at least look at it. If it's not organized, that is an indication your student may not be studying it. They just may be a one and done kind of student, or that they didn't do in the first place. So I do find that the portfolio is really good about diagnosing the reason why students are struggling. Or if they do have all their work, then it's something else that we need to address. So I do find that the portfolio system is very useful for that. The biggest thing for our class, though, and I should have revised this, our characteristics of life assessment has switched to a mini research project, but everything else is still the same. But the biggest thing with our class, though, is we want students to be self-advocates, to be advocates for their own learning. We want them to be proactive in their learning, to constantly revise and make connections. Don't treat this class as a vocabulary test. Make sure they understand why things are and how to apply their knowledge. That's the biggest issue I find for students when they're struggling with studying for exams. Don't treat it as a vocab test. Treat it as a connect and explain exam. And to really take advantage of office hours or even those 5 minutes after class to ask questions or clarification if they do have questions regarding the material. So definitely have the student reach out to me if they're struggling. And if they are struggling with the notes, just a reminder, we do have a note-taking workshop. There is one last one this Friday. I've already had students sign up for them, but if your student is, struggling with notes, check in with them and see if they did sign up, because not all of them did. Okay? All right. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to getting to know your student a little bit better. Bye.